I don't know if you are where I was at one time, where you feel like you're failing everyone that you love. You're basically experiencing that like crushing weight of disappointing those who you care the most about. I've been there before myself, but I know as I've worked with so many parents and entrepreneurs and people who are working away 9 to 5 in their jobs, that this is something that happens a lot. They feel like they're failing and that they're disappointing those around them. Even though they may not use those words. And so I want to dive deep into this with you today. I mean, I know I personally, which you may or may not have felt like this, but like I would lie awake at night running through, my day like it was a highlight reel of all the ways I was failing the people that I loved. My wife needed more support. My boys like deserved more attention than I could give them. Business like deserved, more leadership. And in my head, I felt like I was just dropping the ball everywhere. I told myself like that carrying all of that weight, that really guilt meant I really cared. Like I showed I cared because I was trying to do more somehow, and made me a better dad or husband or leader, because I was so focused on their needs and trying to show up even though I may not feel like I am showing up in the best way possible. And then what I've learned since, and I've helped so many people come to this realization through many different ways, is that most of that weight that you're feeling of that expectation, or that you're failing your family, like most of that weight, it's not even real. You and I, we build these on expectations that live in our imaginations and not in actual conversations that we've had with our spouse, with our children, with business partners, or our boss, or whomever it may be. Like that's just how it works. Like it's actually the very thing that was keeping me from showing up like in the most authentic way possible, using my gifts and superpowers for the people who needed me the most. And so today I want to talk to you about that I said for me it was like a crushing weight of disappointing others, and more importantly, how you really to upgrade yourself, transform the toxic guilt into like honest and life-giving relationships built with these realistic expectations of who it is that you are and how you want to show up. Now, if you are new here, welcome. If you're back for another time, welcome back, of course, to the Giver Method channel. My name is Jake. I'm so glad you're here. Let me pose a couple questions that might frame this up a little bit more for you. Like, have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, you're still letting somebody down? Maybe you're carrying that silent burden of everyone's disappointment, or maybe unspoken expectations, or maybe you feel like you're constantly falling short as a parent or a partner or a person. Or maybe you even started believing that their disappointment is justified, that your worth that you have is tied to how perfectly you can keep everyone happy. And if that's you, I mean, I want you to understand. I want you to hear me say this as clearly as possible. Like, you're not failing. You're not a disappointment. You're not selfish. You're definitely not as disappointing as you think. What you're probably experiencing is what a lot of people refer to as expectation overload. And it's when you are weighed down by the standards that were never clearly spoken, that were never agreed upon, and often lived more in your assumption than in any sort of a reality. And so this shows up in a bunch of different ways. For parents, it might sound like, not like you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like I'm present enough at bedtime, not patient enough during the meltdowns. I'm not magical enough to give my kids the childhood they deserve. And maybe my mistakes are going to, they're going to scar them, or it's going to leave some sort of permanent thing forever. Entrepreneurs, maybe you're thinking hey, I'm disappointing my team who they believed in me, my clients who've trusted me, my family who really sacrificed for my dream. And, even myself, I'm letting myself down because I'm not the leader everyone expected me to be. And I see it show up as well for if you're an employee, work within an organization. You might be thinking hey, I feel like I'm letting down my boss. I'm not available enough, or my colleagues because I'm not carrying enough of weight. My family depends on me because no matter what, no matter how hard I work, it never feels like it's enough. Once again, I'm not going to be talking about lowering your standards in any way or ducking out of any sort of a responsibility. It's about realizing that there's this healthy relationships, are built on honest communications about what's realistic, what, and that, your worth, was never supposed to be measured by what other people's approvals or disappointment looked like. And so we're going to unpack this a lot. Like I said, my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder. I'm the author of this book. It's called The Giver Method. Everything we're talking about today is going to be grounded in the book. I highly recommend you go get yourself a copy. It's available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. And it's designed for people like you and I, who I wrote all the action items and stories and everything are grounded on the idea that you're a parent, you're an entrepreneur, you're working in that corporate world, because I've been in that sea of cubicles before, and you want to make a greater impact. You have this spark that's there, but you don't have the roadmap or the way to get to like the life that you actually want. Well, that's what this is. This is the roadmap. Helps you discover your gifts, superpowers, create more impact, influence. Like I said, since it came out, it has become an Amazon bestseller with thousands of sales, tons of 5-star reviews. Right now it's available. We made it available so you can get as low as $1.99. $2. That's the best $2 you can invest in yourself. It will absolutely change your life. $2 that will change your life forever. So once again, use the link down in the description. Go on Amazon and get it. Pause the video, even maybe open up your Amazon app and go get it, and come back and finish the video. Cool? So, I said part of that is like, it's always grounded in my story and the stories for me. And so I for this particular topic, like I'll never forget a moment where finally things started to shift for me, because I spent months of quietly beating myself up, over feeling like I was failing and disappointing my wife and such. And finally I asked her, I said, what do you really need from me? And what she said blew my mind. And I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. She said, you need to be more present, when you're here at home. Be here and be honest about what you can handle. Don't take on more than you can. Don't try to people please. And all that weight and guilt that I had been carrying, it was like expectations that I truly had invented in my own head, not that she had articulated in any sort of way. And once we started to have these clarifying conversations around it, our relationship got so much stronger. There's someone out there that a lot of people know, Brain Brown, and what I love, some of the data she puts out in the research, because everything I do with the book and the videos, I always like to do go to the experts. What are they saying? And she's done a ton of work. Brain Brown's done a ton of work on vulnerability, and it shows that perfectionism and people pleasing don't build stronger relationships. They actually block any sort of intimacy by turning that connection into performance. So, Brain's words, not mine. Honest conversations, though, even about our limits, create deeper trust and stronger bonds. And so the truth that changes everything. Most of the guilt, those things we're carrying around, comes from chasing standards that no one ever asked you to meet. When you learn to tell the difference between the two, my gosh, you free yourself to show up more authentically for those around you. And so I'm going to walk you through some very specific strategies, that I've used to help entrepreneurs, parents, people who are working away, 9-to-5 employees, to stop living under that crushing weight and start building these stronger relationships rooted in authenticity and in the natural gifts and superpowers you have. Tons of practical tools on how you go do that, And let me be clear, it's not about being selfish or stop caring or anything. It's about caring in a way that actually works. Authentic relationships, they're going to come from showing up with honest communication and realistic commitments, not performing or perfectionism in any sort of way. And like I said, it's all grounded in the Giver Method book, because if you stop defining, yourself by others' approval, you start operating with your natural gifts and values, you shake off the guilt. You actually can serve people. So if you want to dive deeper, go get it on Amazon. It has tons of exercise and things designed for people, so you don't have to, it's not so you have to burn out everything down and start from scratch or go move to the woods to find yourself. It's stuff that you can do day to day in what you're already doing. And if you're tired of carrying that weight alone and you want someone to walk you through, walk that road with you, walk you through what they've been through, apply real life strategies, then check out the one-on-one coaching. We have got a link down below. You can check that out. Go to the page, watch the video, check out the details. If it makes sense to jump on a call, we can jump on a call. And then if you lead a team or a community or have a podcast, an event, whatever it may be, and you feel like this message would resonate with your audience, I'd love to bring it to them. Check out the Speaking in Podcast link. And of course, before we dive in, hit subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. I don't want you to miss out on any future content we have. Like the video, leave your comments along the way of what hits home for you. Cool? Now let's dive in. I want to go through these 7, I think I have 7, maybe I don't, areas. We'll figure it out as we go, that you can start to focus on. And so the first thing is first strategy or area I want to focus on is, stop carrying the expectations that no one actually gave you. It's mind-blowing. So think of it this way. This is your reality check. And this reality check is one that's going to set you free. Because if we're real, most of the guilt you're carrying, once again, it's not coming from other people that have told you that thing. It's coming from the stories that you've been telling in your own head, the spirals you've been putting yourself into. Not just trying to live up to, what your family, your team, or your boss has actually said. Like, they have said one thing or clearly articulated that this is what they're looking for, and you're trying to live up something totally different. They probably haven't even said half of it. But you're trying to live to this imaginary scorecard that no one ever told you. No one ever gave it to you. And trust me, when you're doing that, you're in a performance mode, and that is exhausting. The simple truth is that there's a big difference between what what people have actually asked of you and what you assume they're expecting from you. And until you really start to separate those two, until you separate them, you keep running yourself into the ground. So here's what I want you to do. Just simple things. Grab yourself a piece of paper, open up a note app on your phone, whatever. What we're going to do is we're going to create 2 lists, 2 columns or whatever. And on one side, we're going to write things someone actually said, like, think of it this way, things they literally said out loud. I'm sorry, I have to make it that clear. That they need or that they want from you. What have they actually articulated? And on the right, dump out all the assumptions of they probably expect me to, things or stories, the if I don't do this, it's gonna mess things up fears. And be brutally honest, most people are actually shocked by what happens. The second column is way longer than the actual proof of what's been, they've been carrying. Like, they have all these made up expectations, not what people have actually said to them. Now, it doesn't mean that some of those things aren't expected by those people, but you have to have a clear conversation about that. And we'll talk more about that here in a bit. When you see it on paper, it's like the guilt that you've been dragging around, is not coming from reality. It came from assumptions. Once you can see that, you can start letting go of things or starting to actually be more tactical about how it is that you want to go and approach that. That's relief, because you at least know where the problem is and can go start to take action. And that's what I'm going to cover with the rest of these ideas and strategies. So the second area I want you to focus on is turning silent pressure into real partnerships. So once again, stop guessing, start talking to the people around you. Damn it, that's what relationships is about, talking. The biggest reason we feel like we're failing everyone is because we're playing the mind stories. We're trying to be the mind reader of the year, constantly trying to guess what people want from us without actually asking them in any sort of way. And honestly, that game is going to crush you. I've done it before. It's crushed me, because no matter how hard you try, you're always going to try to feel like you're gonna feel like something's missing. You're gonna keep trying to perform a certain way. You're gonna keep showing up not as your authentic self. And the shift comes, instead of carrying that weight of unspoken expectations, what if we I know it's gonna be hard to take in, just ask them. Ask the question, that's all. That, having this expectation conversation, like a clarifying conversation around expectations, it's not complicated. It's simply moving from an assumption to an agreement. Pick one relationship in your life, where you feel maybe you're feeling pressure. Maybe it's your spouse or your boss or your kids, and lead with honesty and curiosity, not defensiveness. So I wrote out a little bit of a thing, what this could sound like. That this is from a blend of conversations I've heard from clients and from people and things I've had to cover. So think of it that way. Hey, I really care about getting this right with you. And lately I've been worried that I'm letting you down when it comes to this thing. Can we talk about what good actually looks like right now and what's realistic for both of us? You're gonna be shocked. I know it sounds simple, but it is. It's that it's all. That's all it is. It's no speech, no justification, no defending, just curiosity. I'm not trying to prove that you're doing enough to them. You're just trying to get clear on what actually matters. And the kicker is, half the time, the thing that you've been beating yourself up about isn't even on their radar. And that stuff. The stuff that doesn't matter, when you actually hear it, the things that matter the most to them, it's usually way more doable than impossible standards that you've been dragging around on yourself. And when something is unrealistic, that's your chance to talk through it, find a better place. Like I said, sometimes it is that there's an expectation, but you gotta be well, here's what that means. But now we're having a real conversation. So instead of secretly drowning under the impossible pressure, you can build a real partnership moving forward. Don't leave it vague. Don't do that thing. Don't be I'll try to be more present. No. Hey, I'll put my phone away during dinner. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll give 15 minutes undivided attention, after the kids go down. Be clear, be real. And hey, I'm going to see if I can find other ways. But give very specific things. because like this sort of thing replaces the anxiety that comes with that performance, and it brings more trust in. And when expectations are spoken and agreed upon, you can finally know what success looks like. No more guessing, no more invisible scorecards, just really clear agreements between you and the person that matters most to you. Now it takes us to the third thing. Like, we got to learn the difference between real responsibility and fake guilt. So think of it this way: we're trading a whip for a compass. Now, bear with me while we cover this. Something that's really true that people don't fully get. Not all guilt is bad. Some guilt is actually helpful. Like that little nudge saying, hey, that wasn't your best. Let's clean it up. Let's do better next time. Hey, you could show up differently in this situation. And that's healthy. Like, it's responsible. It's healthy responsibility. But then there's the kind that's like, that feels heavy, vague, crushing. That's toxic guilt. And all it does is beat you down without helping anyone. Like, I want you to picture it like this. Like, healthy responsibility, it is a compass that points you towards what's right, and the toxic guilt, shocker, since I already mentioned it, it's like a whip that keeps smacking you with shame, leaving you stuck in the place where you are. So here's how you tell the difference. Here's a healthy responsibility sounds like. Man, I snapped at my kids last night because, like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, and I need to apologize and find a better way to handle that next time. Healthy. There's guilt there. I feel bad that I did this thing, and it's healthy. I'm going to move forward. Toxic guilt sounds like this: I'm a terrible parent, and I'm ruining this for my kids forever. Why do my kids even care? Do you see the difference? One is specific. It has actions. The other's vague and global and all about like tearing you down, like tearing down who you are instead of addressing what actually happened. So here's how you put it into practice. You're going to make a couple of lists. I like lists. I like writing things out. When you see it, changes things for you. First one is going to be guilt that leads to action. So the stuff that points you towards something clear that you can do, and guilt that just hurts. The stuff that keeps you spinning without a path forward. The first is write down actual, like, what next steps. Like, okay, I can apologize, I can adjust, I can reset, like whatever that thing is. For the second list, like, we got to practice how we're going to let it go. Like, not ignore it, just release the shame while like keeping the lesson that came with it. And then there's a big shift that comes. Like, I'm really big on like the language you use and how that starts to shift things. Instead of like, I'm a bad partner, I'm a bad parent, like, it's that, hey, I didn't handle that conversation well, and I want to do better next time. The way you say things, like, it changes how you see yourself and how you show up. And that's an accountability without some sort of character assassination on yourself, because it turns mistakes into momentum, not shame spirals. We don't want you to drag around the story that you're failing. Gosh, I'm learning, I'm adjusting, I'm moving forward. And that becomes resilience. That's what your family or your team or your own soul needs from you. Which takes us into this fourth area, okay? Which is all about choosing from what matters most instead of fear of letting people down, okay? Think of it as it's like the values filter. So it's a trap, I know, that a lot of us fall into. I've fallen into it. I talk to people all the time, and you may have felt the same way. Like, when you're constantly worried about disappointing people, you start making decisions based off of fear instead of who you really are. You don't operate from the right brain space. I was at an event this last weekend where a person was talking about how when you're in those moments, you actually are operating from more of a childlike state than from your adult state, which is like crazy. You say yes when you should say no. You take on things that drain you and don't build you up because you're scared what the reaction is if you don't. Before long, your life is being run by other people's expectations instead of your own values. You're performing. You're putting on the show for everybody because that's what you feel is right, but it's going to drain the hell out of you. And that's where this let's use our values as a filter. Think of it as the lens that you run your choices through to make sure that they line up with the things that matter most. Not just because it will keep everyone else happy in the moment. I've been a people pleaser a lot. I still am. I try to make people happy, but there's a limit. There's boundaries. So here's what I want you to do. On start, you identify your top 3 values, not the ones you wish you had, not the ones you think you're supposed to have. The real ones. What are things you care about the most? The ones that you feel the most alive when you're at your best. The things like presence or integrity, growth, service, faith, authenticity, whatever. Write it down and keep them in front of you. Now, when a decision pops up, and a guilt voice starts saying hey, if you say no, they'll be disappointed. Pause and be well, which option lines up with my values the most? If presence is your value, maybe it means like protecting dinner time with your kids, even though it means sending one less email or doing one less thing for work. If integrity is on your list, it probably means like having that uncomfortable conversation instead of avoiding conflict just to keep the peace. Sometimes choosing by your values will like match what people want from you, which is great. Sometimes it won't. You got to be okay with that. But the thing is, like, when you make your choices from your authentic core, people trust you more, not less. They know what to expect from you moving forward, and gosh, like they know like your yes means yes and your no means no. And why there's no point in changing it, because that's just who you are. Like, and when you explain it, it doesn't have to sound harsh, like you're setting some sort of crazy fence up. But it's like, hey, I can't do that. Okay, great. Well, that's gonna makes people feel like they're hitting a wall. Instead, be like, hey, here's what I can do that still lines up with that. I believe, I believe it's gonna be best for my family or my team or my health. Like, here's what I'm doing as a part of that. Like the way that you're not just saying no, you're showing that you care. Like, hey, I want to help you out with that. I can't right this moment because I've got this thing. Hey, I can't do it that way because of my value, my thing of this. Here's what I want to look at. Consistency of this sort of thing beats people pleasing every single time. Even if you're putting up a boundary that says no to people, and we're going to dive deep into boundaries here in a second. You stop living as a version of yourself designed to avoid disappointment. You start living as the version of yourself that is actually real and authentic, that people want to connect with. And so now, spoiler alert, boundaries, what we're going to talk about. Number 5, how to protect your energy without pushing people away. So boundaries that build, not break things. Most of us avoid setting boundaries because we're scared it's going to disappoint people. It's going to push people away. But the truth is, healthy boundaries actually don't create distance. They actually protect your relationships that matter the most to you. They keep you from getting resentful, burnt out, or stretched too thin, because you want to show up for the people that matter the most to you. So think about it this way. Boundaries, like, they're the limits you set on yourself. They're not rules to try and force you into being someone else. There's a big difference between like, hey, I won't take work calls after 7 p.m. because I want to be present with my family, and like, hey, you shouldn't call me after 7. Those are two totally different things that show up totally different to the people around you. One shows that you care and shows what you value. One's about owning your choices, and the other's about just trying to control somebody else's. And so it's really simple. You start with like, I think someone described it to me once as like the 2 yes rule. Before you commit to anything, both you and your calendar need to be able to say yes. If your schedule is already jammed, even if your heart like wants to help, you have to say no. At least not right now. The half-hearted yes like is really just a delayed no, and everyone else is disappointed because you can't do it all. When you do set a boundary, keep it clear but kind. Like, you just have to, the way you say it matters. Like, hey, I care about this. I want to help. Here's what I can offer for whatever they're asking for. Buy, and then you give them a time frame. Would that work? Or should we figure out another option to work together? If you see what happens there, you're not slamming the door in people's faces. You're showing them you care while still respecting their own limits. Remember, boundaries don't have to be extreme to be effective. Instead of like, hey, I don't work on weekends ever again. It's like, hey, I protect Saturday mornings for my family. And if something urgent comes up, I can check in, but I'll check in Sunday evening after everything else is passed. These sort of realistic boundaries stick because like you can actually keep them. And then where people get nervous is what if somebody pushes back, or tries to push past the boundary? Well, you don't have to get defensive. You just gently remind them, hey, I know this might be frustrating. Hey, just as a reminder, but like, I need to stick to what we agreed upon so I can show up well for you and show up for the things that matter the most to me. Because when people know what they can actually count on you for, they stop they stop being let down by broken promises because like you could have never fulfilled on. Now you're the person who keeps it real, shows up consistently, builds trust. Like, boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're guardrails. They keep your relationship safe and steady and moving forward. And then that takes us to the next area, which is like, why just being present. 10 minutes of focused time beats hours of half attention. That's the power of being fully there and present. I learned it the hard way, but like, when you're worried about disappointing people, it's easy to start running around trying to be everything for everyone, always available, always saying yes, always half present in 10 different areas and being pulled in different directions. But the truth is, nobody needs you everywhere. What they actually crave is you fully there in the moment when they need you. Even if it's for a few minutes, that's where real connection comes. If you think about it, would you rather your kid would way rather have you like 3 hours of scrolling through emails, sitting on the couch, occasionally answering something for them, paying attention to them, or 15 minutes where there's no phone in the room, there's no screens, and you're fully engaged in their world. I promise you, it's the second one every single time. Same with your spouse, your partner, your team. People remember how deeply you showed up and how how long you just maybe hovered in the background. And so start with a couple different things, like practice these sort of things that help you be more authentic and more present. Like you have to pick your anchors. What are the moments that you decide are non-negotiables, for showing up? And maybe it's those first few minutes you walk in the door with your family at night. Maybe it's bedtime routine with kids. Maybe it's Saturday morning coffee with your partner. Whatever it is, guard it like it's the most important thing to you in the world. During those anchors, phone goes down, distractions go away. Give your best gifts that you have, your attention, just be there for them. And of course, be honest when you can't be present. Don't fake it. Don't half listen, like while you're typing an email or doom scrolling, like, hey, could you give me 20 minutes? I need to finish this and I can give you more focus. That honesty builds more trust than trying to split between the two. And then you create rituals that actually fit into your real life. You may not be able to hit every school event, every work lunch, every family gathering. It happens, but you can create meaningful touch points that fit whatever season you're in. Maybe it's 3 intentional questions about your kids' day that gets them talking. Maybe it's monthly one-on-ones with someone on your team, where you're fully locked in. Maybe it's setting aside time once a week for real conversations with your spouse instead of just trading like daily logistics. Because people would rather you have your undivided attention in short bursts than your distracted presence that's stretched thin. Like if you're fully present, even for a few minutes, people feel seen and heard and valued and cared for. And the best part is you walk away lighter instead of constantly wondering, am I failing them? And that takes us to the last one I'm going to breeze through, which is all about shifting from pleasing people today to the trust that lasts. These are long-term relationships you're investing in. Think of it big pictures, what you got to focus on. Most of the time we get stuck in the guilt, like we're living that moment to moment. But if you try to make sure nobody's disappointed right now, that's going to cause a problem. The truth is, constantly managing everyone's reactions in the short term keeps you exhausted and you don't get to build the kind of connection that you want. 5 minutes from now, do you really want a relationship that was held together by, 5 years from now, not 5 minutes from now. 5 years from now, do you really want relationships that have been held together by, always saying yes or always apologizing too much or pretending that you had it all together? Or do you want a relationship that's built on trust and honesty and respect where you have grown deeply more connected with that individual? Where you both know, gosh, how I can show up as my real self, what my limits are, and what they need from me. So think about it, you should picture the future, for the important relationships with your kids, your spouse, your closest friends, your team, whatever. Write out the snapshot, what you want that to be. What are the words that you'd want to describe it as? There's trust, there's honesty, growth, respect. Let that future guide you in your choices. Spot the approval traps that you fall into where you're picking some relationships where that you've been running on you don't want to disappoint them mode. Which, what's one way that you can move out of approval seeking to more authentic showing up? Maybe admitting you can't do everything. Maybe sharing struggles instead of keeping everything, act like you've got everything perfect in your performance. Maybe it's asking for support instead of always trying to be the one who gives. I struggle with that one. And then there's practice honest repair. Look, you're going to disappoint people sometimes. It's called being human. It's just part of who we are. The difference is how you handle it instead of hiding and drowning in guilt or apologizing 47 times. So try this, hey, I know I let you down when whatever happened. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'll do differently next time and how we can move forward. My gosh, that's it. It builds so much trust because you're showing them that you care enough to learn and grow as a part of that. And then create a game plan for the future where you sit down with the people who matter most and talk about what happens when, and if not, disappointment comes up. How are we going to handle conflict? How do you want to communicate each other's needs? How do you want to support each other in hard seasons? Having these conversations before things blow up make relationships stronger and to navigate those rough waters. Because relationships that can't handle reality aren't real relationships, they're performances. But when both people know that disappointment is just part of the deal and that we're going to work through it, man, you stop being afraid of messing up. You start experiencing what it's like to be loved and trusted and who you are, not because you're perfectly performing in any sort of way. That's a legacy you create. That's a long-term relationship. It's not perfection, it's resilience. It's not short-term approval, it's that long-term trust. Now, here's what I want you to know as we walk away today. Like, this heavy feeling of like you're failing everyone, it's usually way less than it's actually worth. You're creating expectations that never were clearly said out loud. Half that guilt you're carrying, it's built on stories that you've just been spiraling around in your own head, stories that you never even agreed upon. So the shifts that we talked about, they're not just guilt hacks, they're a roadmap to trading these performance-based relationships for the authentic ones that matter the most. Now here's the part that really flips the script for you, like it makes it real. The real you, the one with limits, the one who sometimes says no, the one who can't be everything to everyone, that version of you is way more valuable than any polished performance version you've been trying to show up with, right? Because when you show up honestly, others finally relax because you're the real you. Trust grows, and that's where relationships lives. That's what like the giver method's all about. The art in giver is relationship riches. Your gifts, they're never meant to be run on guilt. They thrive when you use them in a place from authenticity and strength and genuine care, not from like a fear of letting people down. And so if this hits home for you today, that's where you want to grab a copy of the Giver Method. The link is down in the description. You get it on Amazon. You can pause the video, go find the Giver Method by Jake Talbert, as a part of that. Now, if you're ready to, for more personal support, you've been carrying that weight for a long time and you want to feel that it be lifted and live a more fulfilling life. We've got a few of our one-on-one coaching spots open. You could walk through this, we walk through this together and rebuild the way that you connect with the people who matter most to you. Check out that link below. Of course, like I mentioned at the top of the video, if you run a team, community, platform, podcast, event that you feel this message would hit home, then let's talk about how we could bring it to them with the speaking and podcast link below. Before you go, please subscribe, tap that bell for notifications, hit the like button. Don't want you to miss out on any of our future content that we put out there about this. And of course, drop me a comment. I read every one of them. Tell me which thing shifted for you, what thing is going to show up for you, how you're going to change how you show up today. And then don't forget, you're not failing. You're not failing everyone. You're not disappointing the people you love. You're carrying expectations that were never clearly said out loud. You're authentic, your authenticity isn't a disappointment. It's actually a gift to the people you love are waiting for. So stop pouring energy into imaginary things. Stop disappointing your disappointments. Stop pouring into that and start investing in the honest and real relationships and authentic conversations, because that's where the freedom's going to live. And so with that, I'll just say thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad you're able to be here. Hopefully you start to see these shifts in your world. You check us out at thegivermethod.com for more details. Follow us on all the social media platforms. But hopefully we'll catch you in our next video. Have a great rest of your day.